We're going to move into our next speaker, Agnes Bihari. Ladies and gentlemen, get up, be ready for this. Agnes is she's specialized in executive diplomatic leadership and management to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Agnes has organized and presented at several on-site and online multilingual events related to protocol and diplomacy, corporate governance, scientific and sustainable development in Europe, Middle East and Africa, America, as well as Asia Pacific. Over the past 28 years, she's been promoting intercultural awareness and soft diplomacy skills as a core foundation of a collaborating and thriving society, provide tools for well-informed, invested citizenship, which is a shared responsibility and interest within new diplomacy. Agnes' topic for today is crisis management and scandal diplomacy. I'll say that again. Crisis management and scandal diplomacy. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Agnes Bihari now.
Thank you so much, Anne, and thank you so much as well for the previously presented wonderful insights. I will touch upon the previous topics. Thank you, Philippa, for talking about the importance of protocol, as well as Professor Cedric, talking about the uncertainty and how we need to be quick thinkers nowadays. And Tami Dlamini, who spoke about the importance of embracing best practices. And something that caught my attention about her presentation was you cannot discover new areas using an old map. So these will be some common topics that I will share with you now. So I'm going to share my screen, and this is going to be a very interesting topic that is not much talked about. I'm sure that most of you have heard about scandal diplomacy for the first time. The reason for that is because I coined this phrase, so obviously you will not be able to hear about it. But by the time we finish this presentation today, and I'm very conscious about the time, I'm going to wrap it up fast. I encourage you to reach out to me as well on LinkedIn so we can continue our conversation. So the purpose of this presentation is not to tell you things you already know, but rather to inspire your curiosity and lifelong learning, as well as critical thinking and discovering things for yourself. So as I said, scandal diplomacy, the rising star of new diplomacy. Now, the key message is to remind ourselves to strive to be impeccable as citizen ambassadors for a collaborative society, nurturing cross-cultural intelligence and soft diplomacy skills. Now we will talk about definitions, reminders, recommendations, and conclusions. I'm sure that most of you have seen the Sustainable Development Goals that are 17. However, I like to focus on two of my favorite ones. 16 is peace, justice, and strong institutions, whereby I mean corporate governance mainly, where we ensure that there is no corruption. We have an increased public scrutiny, both in digital and other forms of media. So we are more prone to being discovered what is happening that was previously behind the scenes, as well as public-private partnerships that are various forms of diplomacy interacting for optimizing results. Now, as it was pointed out previously, while all diplomacy was mainly focused on state actors, now we also have different forms of new diplomacy where non-state actors are also participating. And previously as well, the old way of thinking about diplomacy was, people shaking hands and smiling, whereas in the new era, we also have other types of diplomacy. For example, think about coercive diplomacy that is embargoing countries to deter them from certain type of behavior or to make them do other things. We also can talk about diplomatic channels. For example, track 1 is referred to as traditional diplomacy, and track 2 is a kind of back channel diplomacy. Sometimes we can move from one to the other. One example is the Oslo Accords, where it was initiated by the Norwegian private person, but it ended up as a traditional diplomacy. On the White House lawn, there was an agreement signed between the state leaders. So previously, it was in the form of workshops, shifting public opinion, and cooperative economic development. However, now we can also talk about 9-track, multi-track peacemaking: diplomacy, conflict resolution, commerce, personal involvement, learning, advocacy, and religion. Now, I mentioned previously that we have more awareness in what's happening in the public and private sphere due to digital means. And also, this is the reason why we have to be very, very quick thinkers. But rather than, as Patricia mentioned, crisis, and I mentioned crisis management, I am advocating for prevention measures. Here you can also see a non-digital format of sharing public opinion in the form of a mural painted. So the next section I call reminders, because I'm not going to talk about something new. I'm going to talk about events that were protocol and diplomacy incidents that were in the public eye. However, it's a very good thing for us to take them as case studies and see what we can learn, especially how we can prevent them from happening. So I'd like to remind you about the Watergate incident that made Dixon that ended up in Nixon's resignation, and it has become synonymous with criminal wrongdoing. So just remember this phrase, Watergate. Now, a list of new words have been coined just by adding gate. So suffix is used to embellish a noun or name to suggest the existence of a far-reaching scandal, particularly in politics or government. So these are some examples of foreign policy and diplomatic protocol incidents, such as Russia, Ukraine, Sofa, Party, Garage, Qatar, and Nazi Gate. So in the next slide, you can see some descriptions, and I wonder if you can answer to yourself the question, which gates they are. For example, I'm going to help you with the first one. Some recent scandals about cautionary tales of accountability, the non-observance of COVID rules, breaching lockdown policies in several countries. So that is the party gates, correct? We also had incorrect seating arrangements during the EU Commission visit. So if you don't remember, it was referred to as the sofa gates. We had EU parliamentary bribery, cash for influence scandal or influence peddling, which was the Qatar gate, classified document mishandling, including those of foreign policy, breaching the data confidentiality, integrity and availability considerations, or CIA. That was the Garage Gate. And finally, honoring a war criminal in parliament, that is an ongoing scandal, and this was referred to as the Nazi Gate. So here you can see some of the headlines, and depending on what sources of information you have, you can see different sides of the same coin, and this is why I encourage you to just to try to use as many different sources of information as possible for you to have a broader understanding of the context. So here, for example, how the Partygate impacted the royal funeral seating arrangements. You can see the Queen mourning by herself in an almost empty building. This is about Qatar Gate. We have Garage Gate. We also have Nazi Gate, and there are this scandal, as I mentioned, is still going on. So we also had the implications that came out of this, honoring a former Nazi member in the Parliament of Canada by the Polish minister asking for this war criminal to be extradited. So as you can see, from war hero, he became a war criminal. We also had other things involving Canada recently, whereby Canada mentioned that there was a Sikh leader murdered on Canadian territory and he was a Canadian citizen, but he is referred to Palestinian terrorists by the Indian authorities. So here the tale, cautionary tale that we can learn from is that we cannot say that there is a credible allegation, and you also, humiliate another country by expelling their diplomats. But later, this was retaliated by an Indian former diplomat saying that, from the credible allegation, he talked about a credible rumor, which tarnished the reputation and the image of the Canadian Prime Minister. So when you ask what is scandal diplomacy, this is exactly what I'm referring to. We have a very shortened response time due to the fact that many public figures are taking to different forms of media, especially social media. And this is why it's very, very important to prevent these cases from happening. So we can see other implications. Canada issues travel advisory for its residents. India suspends visas. As you can see, this is a horrible blow to bilateral and even multilateral collaborations. Now, another area that I would like to also mention is the issue of voluntary or honorary diplomats, because they have diplomatic immunity without oversight. They have passports, they have license registration, they do not have to be subject to the same security checks at the airport, for example. They don't have to pay taxes, etc. So now there is a growing industry related to this, whereby there are different companies selling honorary titles. So this is a very disturbing trend, because this means that the criminals can target these positions by themselves, as well as people working in this kind of positions. So when I talk about criminals or organized crime, we can talk about drug trafficking or the trafficking of artifacts, as well as using different funds for example, war. Now, the recommendations, we need to understand scandals because misrepresentation can be intentional or non-intentional. We can also talk about being innocent, negligent, inducement, or execution. So to illustrate these words, I also copied here some examples. When we talk about the same topic where I talked about the Canadian scandal, and I would like to show it that this is an ongoing scandal. If you go to Jaroslav Hunka's Wikipedia page, you can see that this article was originally to be deleted, but now it's being under discussion. So here you can see how much has been going on into this article. So this is a relatively short article, but it talks about a scandal. But if you look at the talk, how much is being talked about, it's going on and on and on. And the last edit to this article was today. So you are welcome to go and check it out for yourself. So when we say innocent, and we talk about a country such as India, who is very far from Nazi atrocities or being far from Eastern European or Central European areas, they call it an inaccidental or innocent activity. Other people can also talk about negligency when they say, oh, it was an error, it was my error, says the Speaker of the House, and they want to clarify that. However, we can also talk about more serious topics when we talk about, pointing the finger at someone else, for example, talking about Russian propaganda. And finally, during the execution part, you can also see that there have been attempts to make this record disappear from the parliament. as if it didn't take place or as if we wanted to change history. And we also need to know that this wasn't the first time that this person was honored in Canada, but it also happened in 2007. So, you know, that if there is an apology, it has to be said the proper way. We need to use the right words to do that. So, for example, Belarus expects official apologies from Canada. They were deeply impacted during the war because of these atrocities. So again, talking about sustainable development 16 and 17, when we talk about oversight, oversight is a very strange word for me in English because it has almost two opposite meanings, one being a mistake, but the other one is being a control mechanism put in place to prevent mistakes from happening. So we have to ensure that we are taking the preventive approach rather than reactive approach and trying to explain and make excuses. So regarding cross-cultural intelligence, I think these are three pillars to talk about. We have to accept and understand cultural differences. We have to learn and observe to make informed decisions. And finally, we have to prevent, identify potential conflicts and mitigate risks. It's very important for us to know the background of you know, and have internal understanding of each culture and not jump into conclusions. Here I also listed some soft diplomacy skills that were referred to previously as well. So there are a lot of courses online that you can, or you can talk to experts as well on this topic. Almost about to finish my presentation, but I think I'm stuck now, the conclusions. So as you can see here, we need to have a boot on the ground understanding of what's happening. We should not be fast to jump into conclusions or make comments on social media because we do not understand all the background. And our roles as citizen ambassadors, as well as protocol and diplomacy experts, is to be aware, to have a balanced view, and to continuously develop ourselves. These are my favorite essential values for diplomacy: integrity, to approach people aiming for a win-win outcome; insight, to understand people's realities, to restore their dignity, and to have a proper impact to achieve sustainable social economic improvement through co-creation. So as I said, I welcome you to connect on LinkedIn. Thank you very much for your time and have a good rest of the day.